Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from, and welcome to the Work Relay and Campango webinar, where we want to talk to you today about some really incredible new features and functionality that is being released today as part of Work Relay 2.0. My name is Kathleen Owen. I'm the Director of Marketing at Campango, and I'm excited to introduce you to our presenters today. John Saper, who's the founder and CEO of Work Relay, also a published author many times over, has a wealth of knowledge, of course, in the area of work management, business process management, and everything that involves. And also Ted Evangelakis, who's the VP of Product Services at Work Relay, and brings with him just as many years of experience in this space as well. So today, what we're going to go over are the new and enhanced feature sets that are part of Work Relay. And you can see the number of types of feature sets that we'll be talking about. John will walk us through that. But we're also going to talk to you about the so what behind those feature sets. What problem are they solving? Ted then is going to lead us through a live demo. We want you to actually be able to see what Work Relay looks like and have that feel a bit more tangible. And as we go through the presentation today, both John and Ted will talk about customer examples, how other customers are using Work Relay to really transform, what's going on inside the four walls of their business. So before I turn it over, just a few housekeeping items. The first is that we really like and encourage participation. So please feel free to enter any sort of questions that you have in the chat function or the Q&A function of the webinar. We are recording the webinar as well. And so over the next week or so, you will get a copy of the recording, and then also just some really relevant information to today's conversation, including the actual release notes, so you can have more details about the more robust functionality of Work Relay and how it can help you really get more out of your own Salesforce instance that you already have. And if you hear anything, or you want to take that's a particular interest, or you want to take a deeper dive into anything, please contact Jared Tunn at campango.com. Jared is a dedicated resource here at Campango to get you to the right people with Work Relay, get time set up and scheduled if you want to take a deeper dive into a live demo. So please make note of that email address. So thank you again for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John.
Thank you, Kathleen. Morning, everybody. Just a quick overview of what Work Relay is. You can look at it as a comprehensive work management system in that it covers everything from simple task management all the way to complex process and project management. 100% native to Salesforce. One of the biggest advantages of the product is that we have this very, very robust point-and-click tool set, which eliminates the need for coding in many instances. See that as we go along. It's kind of like an overview of how Work Relay fits into the picture with Salesforce. And what we obviously we leverage all the power of the Salesforce platform, but in terms of what Work Relay provides, you can see along the top there we have a process and a form designer, a Kanban board for tracking tasks, and then for management we have a very small subset of dashboards which can be expanded and customized in any way that a client would want. And lastly, there's analytics, which will kind of analyze all of the data that's collected when the processes and projects are run, so that bottlenecks can be identified and changes can be made. So, getting right into it here, the process designer, the main thing that we wanted to do in this version of Work Relay is to really simplify and streamline how processes are created. So, you don't have to go through a lot of training to be able to create complex processes very quickly. You can test them now. We have a simulator which allows you to go through the process and make sure they work. We've added some flexibility capabilities and some additional visualization. From the form design point of view, we've made some major enhancements here. We've added a set of functionality around form events, which basically allows you to create forms that in almost all cases you would have to typically write code for. So this is a very, very powerful feature, and we're going to take a quick look at that as well. We've added in a MuleSoft connector, which allows us both in our forms and our processes to connect to anything that MuleSoft connects to, which is pretty much everything. So this makes it very easy to have multi-data source forms and the ability to update and read from these external databases as the process proceeds. On the project management side, the focus here has been on helping the users not have to, from having to recalculate days and change dates and update dates and things like that. We now allow you to create very complex algorithms that you can use depending on whatever your circumstances happen to be, in order to eliminate the need to kind of manually go in there and make the changes. And lastly, the workbots is a new set of functionality for us. And this is kind of like best thought of as Microsoft Excel macros, where you can create a lot of logic and you can combine the logic together, again, to eliminate the need for getting developers involved in your more complex scenarios. I'm going to take this over. I'm going to give it to Ted. And Ted will give us the demo.
All righty. So let's go ahead and we'll kind of start at from the user side and just take a quick look at the the Kanban board, and then we'll look at how these processes are created and some of the new capabilities that we have for rapidly creating processes. So this is our Kanban board, and if you're the work relay user, you're familiar with it already, especially if you're in the Lightning space. We've added a couple of features on the Kanban itself, like a risk indicator, which will basically look at the timeline that's been provided for the project or the process, and kind of what the timeline for a particular step in the process looks like. And it'll evaluate if you're late on the step, if you're going to be late on the process, kind of give you a split rating like you see here on this view here. And you also now have the ability to prioritize or to sort by the risk level. So you can put high risk items at the top of your Kanban board when you do a sort like that. Other features are pretty much the same as they have been for let's say the end of the last release. So I'm going to kind of move on to the process designer, and if we take a look at the designer here, this is the process that we're looking at on the front end. And this particular process is for a point of sale installation process. And it involves some different participants, store manager, project manager, vendor, and a specialist. And we'll kind of come back here and go into a little bit of the the new features, especially relating to forms. But what I'd like to do is kind of step over to a blank canvas and quickly start to create something that looks like this. We're going to define the swim lanes and the steps using our quick entry mode. So let me move my little zoom widget here. So over here, we have kind of a brand new process that we've just started to define. I created the process, and I haven't defined anything yet, except I've named the first swim lane PM for project manager. And I've assigned myself as the project manager. So what I'd like to do at this point is open up our quick entry. And you'll see that now we have kind of an Excel-like grid that we can either individually enter data line by line, or we can copy paste So I have a, where is it? Basically a text file that I have created, and I just paste it in the text file. So you can see it immediately created the process diagram. You can even see that on the steps that had a question mark, it created decision steps versus manual steps. So what I would do at this point is I can go in and I can define my other responsibilities. So you can see when I click on manager, it's creating another swim lane for the manager. I'm going to go to the perform site survey and do vendor, and I'm going to put in vendor for a couple other areas right there. And order hardware is going to be the vendor. And then the approved site survey step is going to be going to a specialist. So you can see that if I collapse this now, that we've created essentially the process diagram over here on the left. All the connections have been made based on the sequencing that we have on that text file that we imported. We can do a little bit of quick cleanup just to make the diagram less tall. And now we can kind of get into the, zoom in a little bit, and get into starting to configure what we need to do here. So for example, the steps that we've assigned here, these are decision steps, and by default, it'll draw the approved connector to the next step in the sequence, and it'll draw the reject connector all the way to the end shape. So what we do here is now we just basically define where we want to change those connectors. So from here, from the approved site survey, if it's rejected, I'm going to send it back to the request resolve issues from site survey. So if it's rejected, I'm going to change this and just move the connector over here to resolve issues from site survey. So you can see now if it's approved, it goes here. And then we're going to change this validate installation date. If it's approved, we're going to take that over to order hardware. Just a couple of quick changes to basically get it in line with the way that we had it before in the original diagram. And then I'm going to draw my reject connector here, sorry. And that's going to go to reschedule store. So at this point, we've kind of redefined the accept and the reject connectors. We put everything together fairly quickly. And from this point, we can go in and start doing some of the additional configuration that you see over here, like adding forms, adding conditions, adding reminders, rules, and things like that. What I want to do before I get into that, though, is take a look at some of the additional items that we have here. Let's say we wanted to encapsulate some of these steps into their own sub-process. I can do that easily by just lassoing a collection of steps, right-click, and then I can do a create subflow. And what it's going to do is it's going to generate a dialog for me where I can specify the name of the subflow, and I'll just keep the default name here. I can specify whether I want to lock the parent so that the parent doesn't complete until the sub-process completes. And then basically I can tell it to start when the parent is activated or when the parent is completed. So kind of like when you do a start subflow action, these are the kind of the core elements of that start subflow action. So if I create a subflow here, it's going to generate a new subflow. I'll go ahead and say use the current user. And now I'm going to open that subflow here. So you'll see that it's automatically created that subflow based on these 3 steps that I lassoed in my original diagram. And if I go back here now, I'll see that it's actually changed. It's taken those 3 steps and it's put them all into the subflow action. And I can, rename the step, whatever corresponding name I want for that subflow. So that's one way to start encapsulating and being able to reuse assets. So this subflow now can be used in other diagrams just by adding it to a step, parent step. On the other side of things, we have the ability also to have a library of steps, actions, and rules. So in this case here, I'm going to just pick a couple of steps here near the end. And I can right click on these. I can save these to a library and end of sequence. I can call it something like that. I can give it a category and save it. And now you're going to see that we have a library down here which has that sequence of steps that I can just drag and drop into my diagram. And now I can add connectors and make that part of any diagram that I want to do that with. And in addition to steps, we also have the ability to work with a library for actions and rules. So as an example, I'll go back to that first process here that has like an action right over here. I can click on the step, go to my actions, and then I can click on this save to library icon. And what that'll do is it'll do the same thing. I can save that, and now you'll see when we go to our library and manage it, we see now we have steps and we have actions as well. And these can just be dragged and dropped. So if I wanted to add this action to another step, I would just drag and drop it onto the step. And then the last thing I can add to a library is my rules. And again, I can do the same thing on the rule name. I'll click save to library and save that. And now you see we have steps, actions, and rules. So these can be reused and organized into folders, so categories. So you can create different sets of library components organized by folder. So let's take a little bit of a detour now and take a look at running these processes and how we can do some quick testing on a process. So I'm going to go to the record page for this process that started for one of these stores that we're installing the point of sale system into. And you can see here on the Chevron component that we have, the current step is order hardware. If I come over now to my drop down over here, if I'm a process administrator, I have the ability to go to the process console. And what this will do, it will open up a view where I can see the tasks on the left-hand side, and then I can see the diagram view on the right-hand side. So here you can see that we've completed the first 3 steps. They're shown in the color code green. We have completed this step, and now we're on order hardware. And you can also see from here that the conditional path was taken after schedule store. It went to validate installation date, and it bypassed these 3 steps, which are basically selected on the schedule store step. You have an option to specify if you want to do the survey or not. So we opted not to do the survey. So we skipped all the survey steps and went right to validate installation date, completed that, and moved on to order hardware. So from here, I can interact with the process in the same way that I do when I'm running it, but I can see visually the entire process, and I can do some tests by filling in the forms and interacting with all the different components that we see in the Kanban view as well as in the record view. So in this particular step, order hardware, we actually are featuring one of our new form capabilities. So I'm going to talk about that in this context now, and then I'll show you the form designer when we get to that stage a little bit later. So this particular step, we are at the point where we're ordering hardware, and you can see that we have a couple different sections in the form. We have the store information at the top with installation date, the open date. We have equipment that's been selected so far, because we started on this maybe earlier today, and we've added one product, but we also have a bunch of other equipment that we can add to the order. So one of the new capabilities that we have in our forms is essentially an event-driven model where you can update lists. So for example, I want to look at the battery tools. I can apply that, and it's going to refresh the list at the bottom. And just so you're aware, the bottom list is actually coming from another database that's on Heroku. And we're basically using external objects in Salesforce and on our forms to pull in that data from that external database. So now I've filtered by the battery tools, and let's say I want to add one of these to my order. I'll click on battery tools, and just the action of clicking on it will open up the quantity editor. So I can come over here now and I can say, okay, I want to do 5 of these. I can change the description if I want. And now I'm going to apply this. And by clicking the apply button, it's going to do kind of the same thing in terms of updating the list, but it's going to actually add the order to our selected equipment here at the top. And now you'll see that we have the different quantities, and you'll also see that the total price has been updated as you add and remove equipment. That recalculates to give you the total for the order. And then we have a couple other filters, like a SKU filter, so you can do WS by ZB. It starts by what it starts with. So no, that's not working. Doesn't matter. I'll just skip forward on this. So that's an example of some of the form events that we have. Also, to be aware, when you're actually working in the Kanban view, you do have the ability to expand the forms now to kind of take over the entire screen real estate. So from here, you can click on the expand, and you basically have a full screen form now, which is great for more complex form that have a different number of lists, different data entry elements. So let's go back to the process console, and let's complete this step over here. So from the console, I'm going to click on proceed. And I can enter a comment here if I wished. Go ahead and apply. And now you're going to see that the order hardware step is complete. And right now we're on the ship equipment, and we're waiting on this step to become activated. So, all right, let me move on to show a couple other new features. We have a concept called connection points, and that's going to be over here. So in this example here, we have a connection point that's going to link all the store processes to an account. So if I take a look here at the step, I'm going to see that I've created a connection point so that it will show me all the stores that are running this POS system installation process. And we'll see that in a Gantt view. So here, for example, we have, actually here, we have this store processes that I'm going to click Open Gantt. And what this is going to do now is it's going to, should be refreshing. Let me see. So right now it's generating the Gantt view to show me all the different stores. So if I collapse this right now and expand it, you're going to see that I have all these different store processes, and I can look at their timelines individually or as a group. So I can kind of see when the entire process is slated to end based on all the different store installations that are currently running. So this is one of the project management enhancements that we've made. And I'm going to use this opportunity to flip over to another Gantt view just to show you how you can easily make changes and updates on the schedule. So if I come over here, yeah. So this is another process that right now we have the Gantt open in edit mode. And as you can see, we have the color coding indicating green steps are complete, orange steps are in process, and then gray steps are future. The blue steps are the planned dates. So essentially we can use those to benchmark against the actual dates that are run through the process. And I can make changes here. So for example, if I go into edit mode.
Hey, Ted, this is
Yes.
Kathleen. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting your flow. I just want to be mindful of time for those that may be having to drop off. I'm wondering, would we be able to pivot? I want to make sure that we're also able to just show the visualization feature sets that are new as part of 2.0 so that we can move quickly, and John can share just a couple of success stories too.
Sure, sure. Well, this is one of the pieces. This is the we just showed the connection point Gantt, which is the roll-up Gantt. So that was one of them. This is basically the Gantt here where we can modify, the dates, and then we have a number of different algorithms that can be used to specify how you want to recalculate dates, going backward, forward, successors, predecessors. So all that is customizable, and when we're making changes in dates. So let me move on to a couple other visualization modes. This is the workflow progress dashboard, where we can see the particular process and look and see where we are on each of the instances of that process. This is the one that we just started today, Mother's Day 2019. So you can see we've completed the first step, and we are on the first step of some of these other sub-processes that are currently running. The other new visualization tool that we have is the planning dashboard. And the planning dashboard allows you to look at current, past, and future steps that are defined in a process and be able to look at them based on different groupings. So for example, this view here is being grouped by assignee. So you can see that the content collection team is slated to work on this first step due next week. Design team has some steps. The opportunity owner has already completed their steps, so it's color coded in green. So this just gives you a window into different views, and you can use this as a kind of as a planning mode to be able to see if a particular group or person is overbooked, you'll be able to see the overlap directly on the Gantt. And then all the filters can be set over here, saved as a filter set as well. So I think that we can probably stop there unless, John, if you want me to go into actions and forms.
Yeah, maybe actions, just a short overview of that.
Okay, so we'll take a look at this form. This is the order hardware form that we were just looking at. So you can see in this form that for example, this apply button uses an on-click event. So when I click on apply, it's going to run these actions. And these actions are defined both inside the form editor and also outside using our workbots or actions. So for example, this apply button is going to invoke this particular action, which is going to take the store equipment that's in that form that was selected, and we set the quantity and all that for it, and it's going to actually write it to an object called store equipment. So we can orchestrate a number of different actions, database actions, Apex actions, all using these new form events, and these form events can be seen right over here as an example. Doing refreshes, updating values, calling the API. All this can be allows the extension of pretty sophisticated capability to our forms. Okay.
So we actually, we did have a question about forms. This is a great question, John. This may be one that you can take, but we've talked about how Work Relay helps companies do more with Salesforce, right? So when we talk about forms, there's some questions kind of regarding how the Work Relay forms that Ted went through actually compare to the forms on Salesforce. Can you just touch on that?
Sure. So one of the biggest problems with forms, as I'm sure many of you know, is that you get to a certain point using point and click where you cannot continue on to do the things that you really need to do, and then you have to turn it over to a developer. And with the new form events that Ted showed you here, you can do extremely sophisticated, complex things without having to get programmers involved at all. And that makes it easy for not only getting it done initially, but also for maintaining it. So if you want to make a change to something, you don't have to go back to the developers. You can just do it yourself. It takes a second, and it's ready to go. So we see this as a major new advance for the product and for people who want to build complex forms without having to write any code.
Great, thank you. Ted, were there any other things that you wanted to go over? Otherwise, I'll have you just pass controls back over to me, and we can wrap things up here.
No, I think I'm fine. I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Thanks so much for the demo, Ted.
Oh,
I know there's a lot to cover. So, and I also just wanted again to say thank you to everybody who's taken the time to hop on the webinar and join us today. So there is a lot of fantastic and very robust functionality within Work Relay, a lot of new features, and clearly we were only able to cover just a handful of those. So please give us a call at the phone number on the screen, email Jared Tunn directly if you do want to get some time set up to take a deeper dive, or quite honestly, if there's just some information that we can provide that would be valuable to you around process and project management. We have a lot of really valuable content that can just be of use to you as well. So thank you to everybody, and keep an eye out for a few emails from Jared over the next few days with some of that content and the webinar recording. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.